Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is my buddy Barry Walsh. He's going to share some stories about touring with Waylon Jennings.
I got a phone call. I had never met him before. I got a phone call in 1986, early 1986. I'd been playing for the last 2 years for Dottie West. I was her band leader from 84 to 86. And the phone rang one day randomly, picked it up, and somebody said, do you want to go to work for Waylon Jennings? There was no audition or anything. He said, do you want this gig? And I thought about it for like a second, and I said, yeah. So I went to the rehearsal and met him there at the warehouse where he rehearsed, and that was the start of it. Really friendly, yeah. We once we were introduced that night, I remember talking to him for, 10, 20 minutes. And I remember one thing I said to him. I asked him, I'd been listening to the material that I had to learn. I was kind of one of those things where you have to learn somebody's whole catalog. So I was listening down, and one of my favorite things was this song, Dream in My Dreams. And didn't know who wrote it, but I asked him that night, that first time I met him, I said, who wrote Dream in My Dreams? And he said, that was Alan Reynolds. And I felt bad later on that it wasn't him, I asked him about that one song, and it was not Waylon's song, it was Alan Reynolds' song. But he was such a song guy and a song collector that I realized later that never bothered him in the least. He was really just into the song. So the band, when I joined him in '86, the band leader was a guy named Jerry Bridges, whose nickname was Jigger. He'd been with him quite a while, 10 years or so. So Jigger was playing bass. Gary Scruggs was in the band. Gary was playing guitar and singing. And Gary would actually do a song like in the middle of the show, and he would give him a feature. Waylon would give Gary a feature. Jennifer Eddy, Jessi's daughter by Dwayne Eddy, was singing backgrounds, and that was Waylon's stepdaughter. And the drummer was formerly a roadie who when Richie Albright left the band a few months before, he kind of just asked the roadie to play. He knew he could play drums, so he got the roadie to play, and that guy played for about 3 or 4 months, and then he was replaced by Jeff Hale, who had been playing with Tony Joe White. And then I joined at the same time as a guitar player from Muscle Shoals named Jimmy English, and Jimmy English and I joined at the same time. I think Jimmy actually put my name in there to get me the gig, and Jimmy played with him for a year or two, and then he left. And Floyd Domino was playing keyboards with me. There were 2 keyboards in the band at the time. Floyd was a great piano player that had been playing with Sleep at the Wheel and some other people, kind of a legend really in Austin, where he lives now. And Floyd was there for about 6 or 8 months, and then he moved to Austin, left the band. And that was basically it. And we went out on the road and started doing some dates. Jessi would come along most of the time, and that was great because I loved them both, Jessi and Waylon both. And Jessi would come out on stage and sing "Storms Never Last" and "Suspicious Minds" and "I'm Not Lisa." And that was her big moment in the show, was those 3 songs. And as you can imagine, I loved playing them. I loved her, and it was all good. I have a funny studio story. We were going into one of the records we did. It might have been a record called The Eagle, that kind of pretty much finished off his major label career. It wasn't a big selling record. It was probably 91, 92. He was still calling me to do his records after I left the touring band. But anyway, I got to the studio. We were already set up. It was kind of the middle of the week. We had the whole week booked. So I just kind of waltzed in, 5 minutes before 10 o'clock. We were going to start, loosely starting 10 o'clock session, 10 to 5. So I came in at 5 minutes till, and Waylon was in there, ready to go. And he goes, something like that. To me, he said something like, you're almost late, Hoss, or something like that. And I said, oh, it's not 10 o'clock yet. And I said, Reggie Young's not here yet. Reggie was playing on the dates. And he said, Reggie's an 800-pound guitar player, Hoss. You're not. And he was right, because Reggie really was. He was that heavy. He's one of the greatest musicians I ever played with.
Did Reggie ever go on the road at all with Waylon?
No, but during the time I was with Waylon, he started doing the Highwayman tours, and Reggie was doing those. Yeah, it was actually that was kind of a bone of contention with me because everybody, Johnny Cash and Willie and Chris, they took players with him to do that gig, and Waylon didn't take anybody. And I always thought I should have been the one to go out because at that point, by that time, I was singing harmony with him. I was singing the harmonies like third above him on the live gigs and playing. And about that time, just before that happened, Ralph Mooney was fired, which is another great story I'll share with you. But Mooney wasn't there, and he didn't replace him at first. So for the last couple of years I was with him, I was playing pretty much most of Ralph Mooney's solos, on piano and singing harmony with him. So I was kind of, I was doing a lot of work, and I felt pretty important to him on the live shows. And then I was kind of crushed when he didn't take me out on the Highwayman thing. I mean, I've gotten over it since, but that was kind of one of the reasons I thought, well, it's probably time for me to leave. After 5 years of touring with him, that's when I decided to leave. But the story about Mooney was in '89. It was actually on that tour that we did for Mervyn Kahn. The first date on that tour was in Amsterdam. So we flew over to Amsterdam the day before that tour was supposed to start. And Ralph Mooney flew, we met him in New York with JFK. So we got to JFK to change flights, and Mooney came on with us and flew from there over. And Mooney had a heart attack and open heart surgery like about 3 or 4 months before that, and he'd been off the road since then. So this was his first gig since his heart attack and heart surgery. So he gets on the flight and he starts drinking. I mean, they told him, you can't really drink. You can't drink again, So he gets on the flight, and he'd gotten away from Mrs. Moon, his wife, for the first time since all this stuff happened. So he's like drinking nonstop, all the way over. I mean, he never went to bed. So it was an overnight flight, and Mooney's like pounding down these drinks. And, we're all worried about him. At one point, I went back to use the restroom in the back of the plane, and Mooney was back there. And I said, Ralph, where are you sitting? And he goes, up there in 2A. He was just hanging out in the back of the plane drinking, like he was in a bar. But we got to Amsterdam, and of course we were really tired. We'd flown all night, so we got some sleep. But Ralph stayed he went to the bar immediately and started drinking, and he stayed drinking for the whole next day. And, it was not good. I mean, he was not in great health coming off of heart surgery. So Waylon found out about it, and he said, "You know what? You're not supposed to be drinking. If I see you drinking again, you're going to have to go home, because I promised Mrs. Moon, I wouldn't let you drink out here." So he straightened up for the rest of that tour, and for a while after that. But we got to Las Vegas at one point, a few months later, and that's where Ralph had been working before he joined Waylon. He was doing a lot of gigging in Vegas, and he had a lot of buddies from the old days, drinking buddies. So he got with those guys and immediately started drinking again. So Waylon came down from the elevator one morning, to get breakfast at 9 a.m. Elevator door opens, and there's Ralph with a drink in his hand. So Waylon said, "You're going home," and that was it. He fired him right then, sent him home. And probably saved Ralph's life for another 5 or 10 years, let him live a lot longer because of that. But that was the end of that. Such a legend, and just such a joy to be around. I actually took a couple of great photographs of Ralph that I cherish, black and white. I was shooting in black and white at the time. I had a really good Nikon camera at the time, and I got one image of him on a ferry going across from Nova Scotia to Newfoundland in April. This was I think this was in '89, and we were doing like a half dozen dates in Eastern Canada with George Jones, and so we got the bus on the ferry, one of these giant ferries, two or three buses get on the ferry, and we're hanging out. It's like a 3-hour crossing across the channel. But it was full of ice. It's April, so we had late winter ice coming in this channel, and we had a Canadian icebreaker in front of us, breaking up the ice so we could get to Newfoundland. And I got this image of Ralph. He looks like, Hemingway or something in his big coat on the front of the ship, and I called it The Old Moon in the Sea. And the other one was Ralph expounding on the bus one night. He's leaning on the counter of the bus with the coffee maker next to him, and he's leaning on it, just kind of shooting the shit, and he's just kind of like he'd been hitting the tequila pretty heavy, and the look in his eye was kind of priceless. Great moment.
Was Richie Albright? Was there some? Did he come back to the band, or was there?
They stayed friends. I forget why he left the touring band, but they stayed friends. And Richie actually produced a couple of the records that I did with Waylon during that time. He co-produced. So they were good. They had a great relationship all the way through.
Did you enjoy being around him?
Yeah, Richie was a kick. Such a great guy. And Gretchen and I actually went to his 70th birthday, I think. Yeah. 70th birthday, and that's one of the last times I saw Richie.
If you'd like to hear more Waylon Jennings stories, just click on the link in the upper right-hand corner of your screens. And tell me down below what your favorite Waylon Jennings song is. Subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.